So I think I'm pretty close to figuring out Fedor's 10-ball break and why it's so effective and repeatable. I know it sounds silly, someone like me trying to figure out the world's best player's 10-ball break, but I'm learning a lot. Wait, so let's first rewind. I have been having some trouble pocketing the second row balls, the balls that normally track towards the side pockets, on my medium speed 10-ball break. I feel like I'm pretty aware of how the rack behaves, depending on how you hit it, and generally if you want to make more balls, you have to add more power, assuming you're hitting the rack square. The problem with most medium speed pop breaks is that the elevation that causes the pop gives you a false sense of power. You're not really hitting it harder, even though the cue ball's flying and it sounds really cool. Generally speaking, it doesn't make a lot of balls, and those second row balls like to travel above the side pocket. So I'm learning that the key to making balls on the 10-ball break is in 1, elevation, and 2, power. Firstly, elevation. Most of the adjustment here that I've made is actually in bridge length, not in just bridge height. So yes, it's a little bit lower, but mostly it's longer. And that does more than just one thing. It effectively reduces my elevation, and it also makes space for the second contributing factor, power. Now this one's interesting because I think it's important to look at how the cue ball is actually getting struck. In many other breaks, the cue is actually level when hitting the cue ball. You strike above center, and that plus the elevation causes the cue ball to bounce. But in this case, the cue is actually coming in at a slightly downward angle. Not only that, but you're hitting more towards the center of the ball, at least from your orientation. This causes friction between the cue ball and the cloth, adding that top spin rotation. And the angle of the impact is what causes the bounce. Wait, why is that important? If you strike the top of the cue ball, then some of the energy gets imparted onto the spin of the ball versus striking the center of the cue ball where all of the energy is imparted into the speed of the ball. And when you're talking about breaking, speed is power. So what can I do to get more speed into my break? Many players, including myself, like to add extra body mechanics. I've made videos on this. More follow through, pushing forward, rotation, the list goes on. But really, the best way to add speed is to focus on timing the hit of the cue ball to the point where your stroke is at its peak velocity. And guess what? All those body mechanics I mentioned actually change where the sweet spot is in the timing. It moves it towards the back end of the stroke where all those mechanics are coming together. And I would actually argue that most folks that add extra mechanics into their break hit the cue ball too early in their stroke. Now, this is where Fedor and many other players have found success. They add power by using, say it with me, PLYOMETRICS. Saw that one coming, did you? Now, I'm sure we've all heard that you have to have a pause on your backswing. And by and large, I think that's the right way to do it. But for breaking, I think you can kind of throw some of those rules out the door. Take a look at these breaks. Do you see any pause on Fedor's backswing? Yeah, I don't either. So whether players that do this actually know it, here's what's happening. Now bear with me, it's gonna get nerdy, but so worth it. So when your biceps transition between lengthening, aka eccentric muscle action, and contraction, aka concentric muscle action, a really cool phenomenon occurs. It's called amortization. Biceps are made of these long, slow-acting muscle fibers, and connecting those muscles to the bone are the tendons. And tendons are like the body's natural springs. They can stretch and carry a load like a rubber band and then release it. And there are a couple components to this. Neurophysiologically, when your biceps lengthen, those muscle fibers actually send signals to quickly contract. And if you hold this position, you lose the aid of those signals trying to get more acceleration through the contraction. And mechanically, those tendons are being stretched and they want to release that energy. And so the quicker the transition is between eccentric muscle action and concentric muscle action, the more additional explosive energy that tendon can release. So essentially with this break, the forward delivery accelerates quicker with the shorter backswing, allowing for an earlier peak velocity at impact, aka good timing. Also, quick mention, remember how I said the bridge length was key to this? Not only is Fedor's bridge incredibly long, but look at his backswing. He literally goes past the bridge loop on his break. The amount of extra speed this guy gets on his stroke from this is pretty insane considering there's almost no body movement in his break whatsoever. Now, it took me a long time to even be okay with trying this, and even longer to learn it and implement it. But I'm telling you guys, I am finally starting to make more balls on my 10-ball break. If you guys like these kind of in-depth exploration videos, please let me know. I'll try to fit more of them in. I do have a lot more ideas on stuff like this, and I promise it's not just breaking videos. But for now, stay nerdy, shoot happy.